Imagine a freezing night, rain pouring down without a break, and under a dark overpass, a little 7-year-old girl clings tightly to her baby sister, both wrapped in a torn blanket, trying to shield her from the cold and hunger while softly singing to calm her own heart. The two of them are alone, no one around, danger lurking, and hope fading with every hurried step of people who don't even notice those tiny figures on the wet asphalt. But everything changes when, out of nowhere, a luxury car pulls up close by. From inside, a well-dressed man steps out, Gustavo, a millionaire, always in a rush, the kind who never looks sideways. Yet something feels different tonight. He catches sight of the baby and, curious, comes closer. Inside the cardboard box beside the girl, he finds a letter. "Please, take care of my girls," the paper stained with tears. What would make a rich man, used to turning his face away from suffering, stop and look deep into that grim reality? Will he just drive off? Or will everything change from this moment on? Stay with me, because what happens next will give you goosebumps, and might shake up everything you believe. The rain wouldn't let up that night. It came down in heavy sheets, sending water running like rivers down the curbs and hammering the old tarp patched up at the edge of the overpass. The icy wind snuck in through every gap, biting its skin. On the ground, Luna squeezed Sofia to her chest, trying to soak up the cold with what little warmth was left in her body and her baby sisters. The blanket covering them was ripped and stained, barely more than a rag. Under that overpass, no one saw anything. No one wanted to. People sped past in their cars, windows up, headlights slicing through the night and vanishing. Luna kept her eyes on the cars. Sometimes she'd catch a face on the other side of the glass, but never for long. Everyone was in a hurry. No one looking too close. No one hearing the thunder or her muffled crying pressed against her lips. Only Sofia's ragged breaths, mixed with the sound of rain, seemed to matter. She was just 7, but the way she set her hand on Sofia's little belly and fixed the makeshift diaper showed a strength far beyond her years. A strand of hair stuck to her forehead, deep exhaustion in her eyes, bare feet trying not to touch the wet ground. Now and then, Luna squeezed her eyes shut, just for a second, just to imagine being home again, her mother coming around the next corner. But when she opened them, it was only the overpass, the wind, and that loneliness. Sofia slept on her side, sometimes sobbing softly, as if she dreamed of nursing and jerked awake scared. When Luna felt her sister stir, she'd pull the girl onto her lap and start to sing. That old song, the one her mother used to sing, voice barely above a whisper. "Sleep, child, the night is here." But sometimes her words broke, faded mid-note. Not for lack of knowing, but out of hunger, sleepiness, maybe fear. The melody seemed to disappear in the wind, but Sofia felt it. She'd squeeze her tiny hand around Luna's fingers and breathe easier. Every strange sound beat through the darkness, a siren far away, a glass breaking, someone yelling in the distance. Luna didn't know exactly what kind of danger lurked nearby, but she knew it wasn't safe. Sometimes she'd jolt awake, thinking she'd heard footsteps or seen a shadow, and pull Sofia closer, hiding the baby's face. Better for Sofia to see and hear nothing. Only Luna needed to pay attention. Only Luna needed to be strong. Time felt frozen. There was no clock, but Luna measured it by the gnaw of exhaustion, the cold creeping in. Each thunderclap sent a shudder through the ground, and for a split second, the lightning would make everything glow, showing the grime on their faces, their matted hair, the fear in Luna's eyes. But she sat up straighter. She trembled, but steadied herself, holding Sofia like a shield. When her baby sister cried, Luna would stroke her gently, blowing softly into her ear. "It's okay. I'm here." She wondered if her mother would come back, if she remembered that song, if she'd return to take them away. But in those silent seconds between each passing car, all Luna heard was her own rumbling stomach, the rain pounding down, and her heart racing. The smell of garbage, soggy cardboard, clothes never washed, it filled her nose, but Luna didn't even notice anymore. Every once in a while, someone would pass by in a raincoat, half in a hurry. Sometimes they'd toss a coin, sometimes turn their faces away. Luna would look up, but never beg. She didn't want to be a bother, didn't want to draw attention. All she wanted was for no one to take Sofia, for no one to mess with them, for the night to finally end. The wet blanket felt heavier. The cardboard Sofia was lying on was getting soggy, like it might fall apart at any moment. Luna adjusted her sister one more time and squished herself in, trying to fit into the same space. Rain soaked her hair, ran down her neck, stuck her thin t-shirt to her skin. Her teeth chattered. She squeezed her eyes shut again and bit her lip hard, holding in her tears. If she cried, Sofia would know. When the loudest thunder hit, Sofia woke up startled and wailed. Luna panicked, soothed her, sang louder, rocked her in arms that had no more strength. For a moment, the muffled sounds of the night seemed worse, because nobody there could help. No one saw anything. Luna looked up at the sky, just for a fleeting second, like someone praying wordlessly. Please help. Just don't let anything happen to my sister. It was a night that wouldn't end. Luna knew she had to look after Sofia, knew she couldn't really sleep. Haunted by an old fear but a love even stronger, Luna stayed there, hugging her sister, placing her own body between the wind and the baby. Only two hearts beating together, trying to survive, hoping that tomorrow would warm up, because all that was left that night was courage and a sister's love, something nobody behind car doors or inside houses seemed to recognize. Luna's stomach growls, that deep ache when hunger has gone past the limit and become part of your very body. She looks at the worn-out bag propped beside the cardboard box, a yellow plastic bag, ripped at the corners, with a drawing of a supermarket she remembers going to with her mom, ages ago. She rummages inside, turning over what's left, a crumpled scrap of paper, a plastic bottle cap, a toy that once was a bunny but now doesn't even have any ears. No food, not even a smell, just cold air and the sense that this won't pass. Luna feels something rising in her chest, the urge to cry, to scream loud enough for the whole street to hear her pain. But she knows she can't. Sofia starts to squirm, her little arms reaching up, launching into the kind of baby cries that only want one thing: to be held, to be warm, maybe just to hear her sister's voice. Luna hugs her tighter, wraps the torn blanket closer around her small, warm body, and whispers, almost pleading for Sofia not to wake anyone else on the street, not to attract the wrong kind of attention. She starts singing that song her mother always used to sing before bath time, pretending everything is okay, pretending the rain doesn't leak under the overpass, pretending the cold will leave if they cling close enough. But the words stumble, catch on her sobs. Sleep, Sofia, sleep, the angel will watch over you. But no angel comes. Her mom isn't coming back, and Luna has no answers for the questions that echo in her mind ever since her mom disappeared that night. Suddenly, Luna feels her face wet. At first, she thinks it's just rain again. But no, it's a tear, real, hot, heavy. She tries to wipe it away quickly, darting her eyes to make sure no one sees her weakness. Not even Sofia, who understands nothing but feels everything. The baby stares at her with one sleepy, tired eye, the other drifting shut, but the crying rises, louder. It's hunger. It can only be hunger. Car noises thrumming above on the overpass are loud, muffled by the thick rain thrashing the concrete. Farther down, some people sleep under their own plastic sheets, ignoring everything. The smell of gasoline mixed with garbage doesn't bother them anymore. It's just how the night smells, how this place smells, how their lives smell now. Luna holds Sofia, gently rocking her, and looks up at the sky she can't even see, just wondering if, somewhere up there, her mother is watching. She aches for someone, so much that just for a second Luna imagines her mother there beside her, kneeling to pick up Sofia, saying it's all going to be okay. But then the cold returns, her stomach growls again, her hand tingles from being so cold. The blanket is useless against the wind. She tries to tug a corner tighter, but almost pulls it all off Sofia. Angry at herself, she sighs and hugs her sister, as if holding her tighter might make it all go away. With every new cry from Sofia, Luna's feeling of helplessness grinds sharper in her chest. She holds on as tight as she can, but she doesn't know what else to do. No bottle, no bread, not even a stale cracker. Only her love, that scrap left behind by their mother, and she tries to stretch it between fear and longing. She doesn't want to fall asleep hungry, but she knows it'll be even harder waking up tomorrow not knowing if tomorrow will come. She looks again at the bag, tries to remember if, yesterday, she saw any fruit fallen near the bar, but she's too ashamed and too scared to go out alone at night. She thinks that maybe early tomorrow she'll try. Wonders if she should have asked for help from that red-haired woman who passed by earlier, but the woman hadn't looked, hadn't stopped. Everybody's in a rush when they see an abandoned-looking kid. Luna had wanted to ask, "Miss, do you have any bread?" But shame locked her voice inside. Now, Sofia's crying harder. Her little hands burn red, her face scrunched up, mouth searching for anything. Luna offers her finger to suck on, but knows it'll only fool her for a few minutes. She remembers how, playing with dolls, she thought being a mom was just feeding them and singing lullabies. Now she knows it's so much more. It's not sleeping, it's crying into a filthy pillow. It's praying in whispers that no one comes to split the two sisters apart. She feels furious at the world, the rain, the darkness beneath the overpass that seems to swallow up all hope. She wants to run, but she's afraid to let go of Sofia. So she just hugs her sister tighter and promises, wordlessly, that she'll never let anyone take the baby away, not even if the wind tries to sweep them from there. Luna whispers into Sofia's ear, "I'm here. I love you, okay?" She says it slowly, almost as if reminding herself, because she needs to believe in something. Exhaustion wins out. Her eyes get heavy. Her head droops onto her baby sister's shoulder. She daydreams of warm bread, breakfast with her mother, hands warm and safe holding her own. But a distant clap of thunder startles Sofia, who burrows even closer against Luna's chest. Luna kisses the sweaty forehead, feeling her sister's body warmer than it should be. A spike of worry. What if Sofia gets sick? What do you do when a baby has a fever on the street? She tries to remember home remedies, anything their mom used to say, but nothing comes. All she has is the blanket, her own arms, and a heart full of sister love. Exhaustion mounts, fear rising along with it. No one's talked to them in hours. No one offers anything. The world hurries above, not noticing it all. But in the small patch under the overpass, there's a silent vow. Luna will protect Sofia, no matter how much it hurts, how much is missing, how much it costs. So, pressed together, the two sisters try to sleep. In Luna's red-rimmed eyes, the last glimmer before sleep is just a single plea. That tomorrow, someone will see. That tomorrow, someone will care. But for now, all that's left is a sister's love, and that's what keeps them going through the freezing dawn. The sound of cars never stopped under that overpass, not even during the day. Rushed people went by, some talking too loudly, others with headphones in, each lost in their own problems. And those two girls? Nobody seemed to see. They looked like just another pair of shadows blended into the grime of that gray corner. Luna sat close to the cardboard box, hugging Sofia tight. The blanket was nothing but a shredded cloth now, damp from the mist of the night before. Still, it was all they had. That chilly morning, the cold gnawed at their bones. Luna's hands hurt, but she rubbed them over her sister's arms, the way their mother did back when they'd get sick. Sometimes she'd close her eyes, just to remember her mother's voice singing, those quiet lullabies, and for a moment, pretend she'd come back. But then came a cold breeze and, with it, the sharp stench of garbage, and Luna's eyes opened again to that hard reality. Sofia slept fitfully, whining with hunger. Her face seemed even smaller than a few days before, shrunken, her cheek pressed to her sleeve. Every time Sofia twitched, Luna braced herself, just hoping her sister wouldn't start crying again. She knew, when hunger hits, so does the crying, and there's little comfort she can give. No milk, nothing warm, just her words and her hug. People came and went. Most avoided them. Men in suits hurried past, if their eyes caught Luna's. Women in high heels, carrying fancy shopping bags, clutched their purses, looking above the girls' heads. College students got off the bus laughing, not even noticing that right there on the wet sidewalk, two children sat. Sometimes, Luna felt invisible. Sofia even more so. Occasionally, someone would look, but it was a quick, judgmental glance. Once, an old man with a gray beard muttered, shaking his head, and Luna heard him. "Where are these kids' parents, for God's sake?" But no one stopped. No one asked. No one. Luna's stomach rumbled. She couldn't remember the taste of hot food anymore. The pain was deep, burning slow inside. She looked at Sofia, forcing a smile even when she wanted to cry. If her sister saw fear in her face, she'd start shaking all over. So Luna forced herself to act strong, at least outwardly. Inside, all she wanted was to disappear or turn back time to when their mother was still with them. That afternoon, Luna worked up her courage. She grabbed the old holy bag and walked toward the bars. The stench was overwhelming, of old grease, spilled beer. Her heart pounded whenever she had to lift the lid of a trash can. She looked around, dying of embarrassment. She knew what people would think. But the hunger was bigger. She heard whispers from the tables, low snickers, words that stung. A woman said, louder, to the bartender, "Get that girl out of here before she brings bad luck." Luna pretended not to hear. Worse was the fear of being chased off, yelled at, or worse. As she rummaged in the bin, she tried not to touch anything rotten, searching for a bread crust, a bit of cookie, anything to bring Sofia. Her hands shook with cold and nerves. Suddenly, a rough hand landed hard on her shoulder. She jumped back, terrified. It was the waiter, a tall, scowling man. "Get out of here, girl. This ain't a place for trash like you." His voice was harsh, pitiless. Luna froze, too scared to reply. She just clung to her bag, eyes brimming with tears, trying to explain with her look that she wasn't any kind of trash, just wanted stale bread for her sister. But she couldn't get out a single word. Gutted by fear, she just ran, with the man's angry huff behind her. Across the street, Luna stopped and pressed against a wall, breathing hard. She looked into the bag. All she'd managed was half a piece of bread, hard and a little moldy. She didn't even think of food for herself. It was all for Sofia. With frozen fingers, she headed back, eyes fixed on the pavement, whispering a prayer not to get shouted at again. Shame stung worse than the cold. Back at their spot, she knelt beside the box. Sofia woke up to the sound of the cars, whimpering. Luna broke the bread in half, chewed a piece, then carefully gave some to her sister, whispering, "Slowly, Sophie. Here's some bread. Mommy's coming back, okay?" She knew it was a lie, but she had to believe it with her little sister. While Sofia ate, Luna stroked her hair. She wanted to shield her from everything out there, the cold, the noise, people's cruelty. But that day, Luna understood something that cut deep. To the world, they didn't exist. They could vanish from that spot, and maybe nobody would notice. It started raining again by late afternoon. Leaks dripped near their box, and Luna pulled Sofia farther inside, trying to cover her with what was left of the blanket. Cars sped by, their headlights just making the shadows grow around them. The sky looked sad, too. Luna felt anger, the urge to scream, to ask the world why no one looked their way, why no one asked anything, why life was so hard for someone who just wanted to live. Right then, Luna felt the weight of the whole world on her shoulders. She didn't even feel the cold anymore, just a strange emptiness, a loneliness that made her want to disappear. She held Sofia, rested her head against the box, sat there listening to the cars rush by, waiting for time to pass, waiting for the day when maybe, just maybe, someone would notice them. She just wanted to be seen, just wanted a bit of warmth, care, a sliver of hope. But until now, it seemed like the world itself was pretending they didn't exist. Gustavo comes home, and, for a moment, everything seems perfect. The automatic gate shuts behind him, blocking out the noise of the street. The mansion blazes with light, lamps casting warm shadows across the walls, but no sound, no inviting smell of food, nothing that feels like a real home. He strides across the huge entry rug, his wet shoes marking up the white floor. A staff member greets him with a "Good evening, sir," but he just nods and barely glances over. In the living room, the massive couch is dwarfed by towering walls. The shelves are filled with pretty photos, original artwork hangs on the walls, everything expensive, every inch of it empty. Gustavo only notices the ticking of the clock, a noise no one hears until the world goes silent. He feels time passing, but it's like nothing in that space ever moves forward. He slips off his jacket and tosses it over the leather armchair, the only one he ever sits in, because sitting in more than one is pointless, makes no sense. He grabs the TV remote, flips channels without even caring what's on. Every scene feels fake. News, soap operas, cartoons, all miles away from him. He switches it off, lets out a deep sigh, heart heavy, his chest tight. Outside, the rain drums on the huge window panes. The sound is distant, but you can tell it's a bitterly cold night. The drops run down the glass like thick tears, and he almost thinks the house is crying with him, though no one would ever see it. He tries to unwind, considers getting himself a glass of wine, but gives up before he stands. His mind spins, full of memories that only return when everything is too quiet. Gustavo closes his eyes for a moment and feels his age crash down. He has no energy for anything. Even after a whole day solving problems, closing deals, commanding respect with that hard edge everyone in the city knows. But here, in the silence, he owns nothing. He's just a man trying to forget what hurt. You can see it in how he grips his leg with one hand, jaw tight, expression serious and tired, a look of someone who can't remember the last time they really smiled. He looks at the ceiling, and without meaning to, his mind drifts. He remembers the shack he grew up in, the sound of the train tracks in the early morning, his mother counting coins at the end of the month. He remembers the dark nights, no lights, just a flickering candle threatened by the breeze. A swell of longing squeezes his chest, and for a few seconds, everything he has now seems pointless. No pricey couch, imported rug, or gold lamp can fill that deep emptiness. His phone buzzes on the table. It's a message from some manager, a meeting set for the next day. He schemes it, lays the phone back down, doesn't reply. He just stares at his reflection in the screen's black glass. A fine-looking man, but his eyes are cold as the living room floor. Under the suit and gold watch, pure loneliness. Gustavo stands slowly, walks to the window. He fingers his keychain in his pocket, spinning it to drown out his own thoughts. The city sparkles outside, car lights flitting by, everyone living their own story, but he feels like a spectator, as if he's not part of any of it. He shivers, even in the heated house. He wraps his arms around himself, huddling by the enormous glass doors. His eyes glisten, but he hides it, swallows his tears the same way he's done his whole life. He never lets anyone see his weakness, least of all his staff. The rain thickens. He remembers all those nights sleeping alone, frightened, drunks yelling outside the shack. The smell of wet clothes, the trembling in his body from hunger. Years and years have passed, but the feeling of abandonment sticks, no matter how much money he has, how much respect he commands. The clock ticks on. Gustavo feels frozen, caught between a past that bleeds and a present that doesn't heal. He wonders if it's worth it, if anyone notices he really exists, or just as the name stamped on supermarket fronts. He yawns but isn't tired. He wanders the house slowly, glances at painting after painting, piece of furniture after piece, finding meaning in none of it. He stops in front of the cold fireplace, imagines what it'd be like to have a family here, crowded in, laughing, splitting a piece of cake still warm from the oven. But the big dining table is set for empty guests. Plates lined up, no stories. The silence hurts. He remembers his mother's laugh, the smell of simple food, the warmth of a hug that no longer exists. He could travel anywhere he wants, but doesn't know where to go. He can buy anything, except the chance to go back and fix what went wrong. Sitting there, alone, Gustavo thinks how strange it is to feel so small while being so big for everyone else out there. He runs a hand through his hair, closes his eyes again. His throat tightens, and only those who truly know the pain of growing up without anyone would recognize a silence like this. Again, the rain batters the window, slow, heavy. The sky seems to close out the world along with his heart. And even surrounded by luxury, Gustavo feels like he's outside, looking in from afar, waiting for something he can't even name. And the emptiness only grows. No one sees, no one hears. But right there in that silence, he realizes something is missing. Not money, not power, not success. Someone to call family. The echo of the past won't leave him alone. And deep down, Gustavo knows he may never have stopped being that sad little boy, waiting for someone to hold his hand. The luxury car barely makes a sound as it glides down the puddled street. Inside, the scent of leather mixes with the chilly air slipping through a window Gustavo forgot to close. He grips the steering wheel tight, eyes fixed ahead, as if he doesn't even want to glimpse his reflection in the glass. The rain thrums hard, lashes the car with heavy drops that sound like they'll last all night. Outside, everything's smeared. The glow of street lamps, shadows of trees, hurried people hugging their coats to their bodies, fleeing the wind. Feels like a bad movie, one of those endless dramas that just drags on. On the radio, an old song starts up, way too shrill, and Gustavo slams the button off, leaving nothing but static. He figures silence will help, but it doesn't. It only makes the noise in his head louder. Gustavo is angry, but not even sure who at. The manager who kept making up problems in the meeting? His team that never delivers? The employees, the traffic, the rain? Deep down, it feels like he's mad at himself. This itch in his chest every single night. Why? He's made it. Look at this Mercedes. Look at his suit, the expensive watch on his wrist, a life surrounded by luxury, travel, wine. So why the sadness? What is this hole nothing can fill? Not even the very best money can buy. Gustavo glances at the passenger seat, empty. He wonders how things might have been. Thinks of the child he never had. The wife who left because she couldn't stand all the distance, all the work. But even then, he knows none of these absences really explains the ache tightening his chest. He takes the turn slowly, passes a few traffic lights blinking yellow, and the memories show up. Always at this time, when you least expect it. Him as a kid, holes in his sneakers, the other boys at school laughing because he brought bread with sugar for lunch. His mother, exhausted, sitting on the curb waiting for a job that never came. The smell of reheated coffee, the sound of the thin door banging in the wind. Those were cold nights, just like now. Funny how the body remembers the cold even after all these years. He feels his feet freezing, even wearing new shoes, the heater on. He remembers the sound of rain on the tin roof. It was so loud he could barely hear his mother's voice singing a quiet lullaby, just loud enough for her and no one else. He tries not to think about it, tries to laugh it off. A sad millionaire sounds like a bad joke. He always told himself, never again will I have to go without in this life. And he kept that promise. He opened each supermarket like building a wall between past and present. Built his fortune with the rage and hunger of that beaten-down little boy. But now, nearing 50, he sees there's no use running. Some nights, the past barks inside him like a chained dog, and there's no sound of money that can quiet it. We grow up, but the wounds just move around. They stop hurting the skin and start bothering your heart. The window fogs up a little. He wipes it away, impatient. On the sidewalks, he sees the same old scenes, just from a different angle now. A woman standing with a small child in her arms, waiting for who knows what. Two boys tugging at each other, sharing an umbrella made from a plastic bag. It doesn't matter how much time goes by. There's always someone in the cold, waiting for a chance, a scrap. He pretends to ignore it, but something pokes at him. A kind of foolish shame, mixed with compassion and anger. The phone vibrates on the console. A text from an executive complaining about late spreadsheets. Gustavo doesn't even pick it up. That's not what matters now. What are these millions? What's this mansion, this reputation as a successful man if, inside, everything's empty, abandoned, ownerless? He thinks of his mother. Wishes he knew what became of her dreams, if she was ever happy, even for a moment. Wishes he'd had the courage to ask, but she was gone so early, before he could ever give anything back. That kind of regret aches in a different way. It sits in you like a stone. Outside, honking drifts in from far away. The city keeps going at its own pace, regardless of anyone's suffering. Gustavo drives with no real destination, maybe just to feel alive. So he doesn't have to return to that deserted mansion, where each room only makes the loneliness bigger. Suddenly, he wonders if there's really any way to fix this discomfort. If some gesture can change anything. But right away he sabotages himself. Not my problem. The world's unfair, it always was. But inside, a small, tired voice nags. What if it were me again? What if it were my daughter on that cold floor? He sighs deep, drives under a viaduct. Right there, the rain seems even stronger. The light up ahead turns red. He brakes gently, almost without noticing. And then, for a moment, everything stops. Time, pain, the sound of the car. Just the rain and the shape of a filthy blanket moving on the ground, nearly hidden next to a cardboard box. His heart pounds funny, heavy, as if it wants to ask why some scenes never change, even when your whole life turns upside down. He looks away, grips the wheel tighter, but can't bring himself to press the gas. And in that pause, as raindrops tap the glass, Gustavo feels the past coming back in a wave. Hunger, cold, fear, all mixed up. It's all back again, but this time he's on the outside. It's another child, another misery, another freezing night, but the pain is an old acquaintance. He closes his eyes for 2 seconds, searching for air. He knows, from this moment on, something will change, even if just for one night. The red of the traffic light left everything at a standstill, except Gustavo's mind. There, in the forced silence, he listened to the rain splashing on the hood. Heavy drops, one after another, running down the windshield in weird patterns. It was supposed to be just another night. Just another drive to clear his head. From work, from the muffled screams of childhood, from that unease that never left. But on the other side of the street, something was different. A pile of clothes seemed to move. From a distance, he almost thought someone was tossing out garbage at dawn, until he saw a scrap of blanket, worn thin, filthy, the kind that doesn't warm anything. Something jolted in his chest. He felt cold inside, breathed deep, rubbed his forehead, but couldn't tear his eyes away. Before he really knew what he was doing, he turned the wheel and pulled over. The car, modern, too big for that puddled sidewalk, looked all wrong out there. He parked the way you do when you're not sure what you're doing. Sat inside for a few seconds, looking at his own reflection in the mirror, the scruffy mustache, the dark circles, the expensive suit all bunched up on the seat. The rain picked up, and he grabbed the coat from the back seat, threw it over his jacket, and got out. The clack of his shoes on the wet sidewalk mixed with distant thunder. Up close, he could smell the wet asphalt, sharp and real, and a thread of rotting food odor drifting from the avenue's trash bins. Gustavo crossed the street, walking slowly, careful not to slip. With every step, the wind sliced his skin, but what hurt was something else. He couldn't quite say. All he had to do was look. Two tiny bodies huddled together, trying to vanish into their own embrace. He approached quietly. Didn't want to scare them, but even just getting close, he felt the tension in the air. Traffic murmured in the distance, but under the viaduct, it was just silence and fear. Luna, the older girl, must have been about 7. She sat with her legs crossed, nearly swallowed by the blanket, but left space for her little sister. Wet hair plastered to her forehead, hands gripping the baby's small body. Eyes wide, not blinking. She looked exhausted, as if even blinking was too risky. In her lap, Sofia, just 8 months, slept with her mouth open. A round face, but pale, her skin marked by cold. Even under the blanket, she trembled. Gustavo saw her chest rising and falling fast. Her tiny hands, half out, were shriveled, thin, almost purple. He watched for a while, not knowing what to do. His throat tightened. For a split second, memory flooded in. He saw a small boy, himself, 40 years ago, gathering firewood for warmth at night, hungry, fingers aching. He swallowed hard, felt ashamed of the expensive watch on his wrist. Wished he could disappear, but his legs wouldn't move. He noticed the cardboard box by the girls. Soggy from the rain, heavy, but still serving as a makeshift shelter for something important. He knelt down, wanting to peek inside, but didn't get too close. Didn't want them to think he was a threat. Luna noticed. She pulled Sofia closer, her eyes wild with panic. Scanned around, looking for an escape. Didn't say a word. The way she poised herself between Gustavo and her baby sister said it all. The way she shrank to shield the baby made him feel ashamed, standing there, a grown man, helpless in the face of a child's fear. Gustavo swallowed hard, opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The air was freezing, thick, heavy. He breathed in deep, tried to smile, but realized then that no one trusts a stranger's smile at night. Especially not out here, in the cold, abandoned. Sofia started to stir, waking up. Her eyes opened slowly, searching the viaduct ceiling, then her sister's face. She whimpered in desperation and exhaustion, a hoarse, weak cry, as if she barely knew how to cry anymore. Luna whispered something, stroking the baby's head. A song, faint and off-tune, sad, that only made sense to the two of them. He stayed put, waiting for some reaction. Didn't want to scare them, but every second he stood there he turned into an invader. The rain didn't let up. Water was already seeping into his shoes, freezing his feet, but none of that mattered as much as that muffled sobbing. Luna's gaze met his for a moment. There was no hope there, just weariness, fear, and a kind of absurd strength no child should need to have. Gustavo's chest ached with an intensity he hadn't felt in decades. No one said anything, just rain and occasional cars passing. Traffic lights flashed red at a distance, as if counting out the suffering of those two girls. The cardboard box caught his eye again. Almost without thinking, He knelt next to it, one hand on the wet ground. The smell of damp cardboard rose up, mixed with the stale scent of old baby powder. He breathed deep, eyes closed. Inside the box, he saw crumpled clothes, used diapers, and something at the bottom, an envelope, wrinkled, torn at the edge. But he didn't have the courage to touch it yet. A sad calm, almost agony, grew in his chest. That knowledge that, for these girls, no one else was coming. It was just them and their fear. And maybe, tonight, it was up to him to really see what was happening. Gustavo stood there for a few seconds, rain pounding the ground, making that sound like fingers drumming on a car hood. He was there, under that viaduct, wind sneaking down his collar, turning up memories he tried hard to forget. All he could hear was distant traffic. There, in the silence broken only by a baby's muffled cries, everything seemed frozen. Gustavo looked down at the cardboard box beside the older girl. A battered doll missing an arm, dirty clothes, an empty cookie packet inside. The baby, Sofia, had her face pressed to a ripped blanket, only her eyes poking out. They barely blinked, huge and black like puddles. Luna, her sister, sat beside her, her face streaked with the gray grime of street sleep, gripping Sofia's tiny hand like she was afraid someone might steal it away. Gustavo crouched down slowly, weighing whether to get closer or to give up and leave. But something about this scene drew him in. A mix of pity, discomfort, fear. He looked cold, but inside his chest was tight. Then he spotted, at the back of the box, a folded bit of paper stuck to the blanket. He fished it out awkwardly, fingertips wet from the rain. The paper was crumpled, some places already fading, like it had wept along with whoever wrote it. He unfolded it slowly, saw the writing was shaky, like the hand that wrote it was weak, or just nervous. The paper smelled a little of tears, a little of fear, a little of longing. Please take care of my girls. If you're reading this, it's because I failed, but I believe my forgiveness is in the hands of someone kind. That was all. Just that. Gustavo stared at those words for 2-3 seconds. Swallowed hard. The handwriting looked young, but tired, desperate for a miracle that never came. He looked at Luna again. She saw, right away, and pulled the box closer to herself, as if afraid that a big man in a suit and expensive watch might try to take her last sliver of hope. "You're not a cop," she whispered, voice nearly gone. Under the dirt, Luna's eyes were huge, terrified, like a trapped bird on a thin branch. Gustavo didn't answer. He wanted to say something, but the words tangled up. He didn't even really understand the size of the pain that hit him, bringing back childhood memories he'd tried to throw away. Nights of hunger, fear of grown-ups, the feeling of being invisible to a world rushing by. He stood there, holding the soggy letter like he was holding guilt. The thought came on instinct. This isn't my problem. But his hand shook, and his eyes lingered too long on those two girls' faces. He looked around, searching for someone. Nothing. Just wind, the indifferent city, and sirens wailing in the distance, never stopping. "Where's your mom?" he finally managed, voice fainter than he wanted. Luna hugged the doll to her, angry. "She went to get bread, a long time ago," she mumbled, eyes dropping, as if she already knew the bread wasn't coming. Sofia made wet little sounds, almost crying again. Luna let go of the doll and tried to adjust the blanket to shield her sister, but couldn't block out the cold. The baby's face was pale, bruised with purple circles that made no sense on someone so small. Gustavo shifted restlessly. He pawed at his pocket, pulled out a handkerchief without knowing why, wiped off a raindrop from his forehead, but it was impossible to tell if it was sweat or just nerves getting him all lost. The letter was still in his hand. For a few seconds, he considered handing it back, pretending he never found it. Just moving on, getting back in the car, driving away, forgetting that piece of reality. But he couldn't. The request written on the paper felt heavy. Not a prayer, a scream. A last thread of hope tossed to the world to see if anyone, by chance, had more heart than they thought. And it hurt. Sofia whimpered louder, that faint cry of someone who ran out of tears long ago. Luna rocked her, awkwardly, singing her mother's song, just desperation hiding inside a lullaby. The rain thickened, dripping into Gustavo's face, blinding him for a moment. He looked around, scared of drawing attention, scared of not being able to do anything right, scared of facing all the things he'd always ignored. Luna stared back at him, her eyes saying, "I don't trust you." but her body begging for help. The silence between them was almost unbearable. Gustavo stood up, still holding the letter, heart racing. Ran his hand through his hair, tried to decide. Leave, as always? Or admit there's no way out unharmed now? The request was simple, but anything but easy. His conscience made more noise than the whole city. For the first time in years, Gustavo felt ashamed of his wealth, and a huge fear that he didn't know how to save those girls. Gustavo drives like he can barely see the street. The wipers swish back and forth, scattering water everywhere. But no rain in the world can wash away the images stuck in his head. He grips the wheel hard, knuckles white, as if struggling to keep everything under control. But he's not, and he knows it. The girl's downcast eyes, the way she shielded her sister with her own body. He sees it all again, even looking straight ahead. It's useless. One side of him insists it's not his problem, that he's done enough, he shouldn't get involved. The other side digs at him, bringing back childhood memories he swore never to remember. Sleeping hungry, cold burning the skin, the feeling of being unseen by anyone. It comes through stronger in the silence of his fancy, muffled car. The contrast is almost cruel. The radio plays some song faintly, but Gustavo doesn't notice when it starts or ends. What he hears, deep down, is the echo of the baby's muffled crying, lingering like a ghost. He can still see that trembling child, furrowed brow and sleep, that thin, sweaty hair. And Luna, her eyes seemed adult and child at once. Such huge fear mixed with a courage he can't imagine where she found. He parks at the mansion's gate, but sits there for minutes, not turning off the engine. Drizzle trickling down the glass. Everything seems still, but inside, it's like a war starting. He lets out a tired sigh, thinks he should be grateful to be here, in the warm leather seat, with the whole house glowing and waiting for him. But comfort stings, churns his stomach. Gustavo grabs his phone, mindlessly opens and closes apps as if busy work could help him forget. Looks over messages from the last meetings, worries about this month's revenue. Suddenly it all feels so empty, weightless. He thinks, what's the point, if those two girls are out there with nobody? But then he tries to check himself. Not your responsibility. There are so many kids like that. You can't fix everything. Even so, he goes to the kitchen, gets a glass of water, stands staring at the tile, his own weary face reflected back at him. His hands shake a little. Not from cold, but something inside, something he can't quite name. Maybe fear, maybe shame. He wonders how a letter can shake someone this much. But it's not just the letter. It's the shaky handwriting on wet paper, desperation that seemed aimed at him. My forgiveness is in the hands of someone kind. Is that him? Late at night, he tosses and turns in his expensive sheets. Every time he closes his eyes, he sees Luna curled up, her hair stuck to the baby's forehead and her small hand stroking softly. He remembers, without wanting to, his own past, the smell of wet clothes, the scrape of hard pavement at his back, the fear of never waking up. And he asks himself, why did it hurt so much to see those girls? He's been through tough things, seen it all, ignored kids like that on the street before. But this time, something inside seems broken. Gustavo tries to convince himself to let it go. That he's done enough, the police will deal with it. Social workers exist for a reason. But the truth is, he feels like a coward just thinking about never looking back. Feels a hollow ache in his chest, as if everything he built was just scenery. He keeps thinking about the girl's mother, about what could have happened to drive her to this point. The letter haunts him. How does someone abandon two kids like this? And at the same time, how is it not pure abandonment? If there was still hope left on a scrap of paper? He's angry, sad, feels betrayed by his own ideas. Never thought he'd feel so much for someone he didn't even know. The hours drag by. Gustavo sits at the edge of the bed, chin in his hand, watching the digital clock flash on and off, each minute longer than the last. He remembers little details. Luna's soft, shallow breathing as she slept sitting up, her chest fluttering, like someone who never lets herself really rest. The dull noise of the street, distant honking, a siren blurring by, all mixing with his thoughts. In his gut, he knows he's afraid. Afraid to get involved, to feel too much, to lose what he's always controlled. Afraid to step out of his comfortable life and face the unknown again, the pain of a childhood just like theirs. Only now, with so much money, so many people around him, Why does he still feel so alone? Why were two little girls enough to open the old wound he tried to keep hidden from everyone, even himself? The night seems endless. Gustavo closes his eyes, but never truly sleeps. Only hears the rain insistently tapping outside, a constant reminder of the cold beneath the viaduct. When the sky lightens, he realizes he hasn't decided anything. Still feels split in two. But something won't let him go back to the way he was. Luna's face appears in his thoughts again, like a silent plea, do something. One more time, he asks himself if he has the guts to walk away. But now, more than ever, Gustavo knows that some questions never leave you. And if you don't try to answer them, you'll end up regretting it forever. Gustavo wasn't even sure what he was doing back there. His car parked, hazard lights blinking in the fine morning drizzle, nearly empty street, as he took a deep breath staring at the dark underpass. The musty smell hit him before he even got out. The soaked sidewalk, water splashing up around his shoes, everything seemed sadder than the night before. This time he walked even slower. The silence was strange, broken only by the sound of cars passing above and a few stray barks in the distance. His heart beat fast. He didn't want to admit it, but he was afraid he wouldn't find the girls there. Suddenly, he spotted Luna, curled into a corner of damp cardboard, clinging to Sofia with a force you could see from far away. The drizzle wet her dark hair, making it stick to her face, a face that looked much older than 7. Her big, shadowed eyes stared at Gustavo, as if he were a threat. Sofia waved her little arms, cocooned in a blanket that barely covered her body. Her face glistened with sweat, but was mottled with tiny red spots. Her mouth pursed up, and she whimpered weakly, that hoarse cry with no strength left in it. She looked feverish. Luna saw the man approaching and tensed, pulling Sofia closer, trying to hide both of them with her own body. She was shaking, but still looked straight at Gustavo, prepared to fight off any adult who came near. But exhaustion and desperation lived in her gaze, too. He stood, almost not knowing what to say, facing them, so small in a sea of concrete and grime. Hardly anyone passed by at that hour, only a few people in a hurry who never looked to the sides. The smell of garbage, mixed with damp earth, made it all harder to breathe. Inside him, something squeezed tight now. It wasn't pity, but a mix too hard to explain. He remembered the nights he spent on the streets as a boy, the sting of cold, the fear of waking up to find even the nothing he had was gone. Even after all this time, he could still feel every bit of it when he dreamed. Gustavo thought to speak, but no words came out. He saw Luna didn't let go of Sofia, not even to catch her breath. The blanket clutched to both their chests. Her expression shifted every second between distrust and a glimmer of hope buried deep inside. In the middle of this silence, only Sofia's faint whimpering, her quick breathing, could be heard. Gustavo could also hear Luna's empty stomach growling, though she tried to swallow hard and hide it. The world around was gray. The cardboard beneath them sagged, soggy, water running down the sides. Time seemed frozen, but the world kept moving. A noisy truck rumbled on the street above, making the cold wind cut even sharper. Gustavo shivered, but knew it wasn't just the chill. He looked at Luna and Sofia and couldn't hide his shock. How can anyone so small bear so much? For a moment, Luna dropped her eyes. He saw she was crying quietly too, trying to gulp it down like a grown-up. Her lip trembled. She clutched Sofia, like she might shield her from the whole world. Gustavo wanted to say something, but everything sounded wrong. He wasn't just a stranger, he was almost an enemy by their first look. Luna scrubbed her tears away with the back of her muddy hand, her thin arm shaking. "Don't come closer," she said quietly, but firm. The sort of courage you only find when you've already lost everything. Gustavo stopped where he was. He took off his coat, without really thinking, held it out gently, offering peace to a wounded animal. He saw her hands clenched, shielding her sister. Wanted to say he wasn't a threat, but stood still, his gaze uncertain, tangled with the fear of rejection and another fear he couldn't quite name. Sofia's face was turning even redder. She whimpered weakly, struggling to find air. Luna panicked. She looked at him, as if begging for help but too ashamed to ask. The street was colder now. Gustavo felt a tightening in his chest, a sudden urge to grab both girls and run far away. But he knew he couldn't scare them more. He knelt on the freezing concrete, squatted close but not too close, waiting for Luna to decide. Everything showed on her face: anger, fear, hunger, exhaustion. A small, trembling hope flickered there, almost gone. She looked at Sofia, squeezed her eyes shut, and sniffled. The silence between them hurt. All you could hear the whole time was Sofia's labored breathing and Luna gasping for air like someone about to drown. Gustavo felt the urge to cry, something he hadn't done in years. He held his tears at the corner of his eyes, unsure what to do with so much past and present weighing on him all at once. There, on that cold, windswept night, it felt like the world had forgotten the two of them. But Gustavo couldn't turn his back anymore. Deep down, he knew he wouldn't find peace until he changed something about this story, even if everything ended in disaster. The sound of rain hitting the asphalt was the only thing under that overpass. Drops dripped from the concrete, falling in streams around Luna and Sofia. There was a smell of filth mixed with dampness, a chill that seeped right down to your bones. Luna had been there for hours, maybe days, she couldn't tell anymore. But tonight was heavier, because Sofia, who normally cried softly, was now letting out louder and muffled sobs. Sofia's little face was shiny with sweat, but her body shook. Her tired little eyes would flutter open only to close again right away. Sometimes she let out a long, aching whimper that could break the heart of anyone nearby. Luna tried rocking her little sister, singing clumsy words like she faintly remembered their mother doing, just to try and soothe her, but tonight it was useless. She hugged her tight, and, instead of singing, she started to cry too, a quiet cry, swallowing her hiccups, so as not to scare Sofia anymore. That's when Gustavo showed up again. He arrived slowly, nearly tripping on the curb. His hair was wet from the rain, his clothes carrying the street's bitter scent, mixed with the expensive cologne that no longer made sense in a place like that. He looked different from the night before, smaller somehow, softer on the inside. Gustavo stopped about 6 feet away. He saw Luna desperately trying to quiet Sofia, but there was nothing he could do. The fear in Luna's eyes left Gustavo even more frozen. He'd never felt the weight of this kind of responsibility before. Sure, people depended on him in business, in 1,000 contracts, but here, in the real world, it was something else. Sofia burst out crying louder, her voice raw, scraping her throat, the sound echoing under the overpass. Gustavo felt a crushing squeeze, sweaty palms, tight chest, as if the air had turned to stone. For a moment, he just stood there, unable to move. Car horns blared somewhere far above, but only her crying filled this space. Luna looked up at him with red-rimmed eyes, her face streaked with tears and grime. She spoke so softly, almost soundless, that Gustavo hardly caught the words at first. But they hung in the air. "She's going to die. Please help." That was it, nothing else. But that plea ripped the ground out from under him. Without really thinking, Gustavo went over to them, kneeling slowly. His hands shook so much when he touched Luna's shoulder, it was plain to see. She shrank back, shielding Sofia, but something changed in her face. Maybe exhaustion, maybe surrender. She had nothing left to fight with. For a second, the baby was between Gustavo and Luna. He hesitated, locking eyes with the older girl as if asking permission. Luna looked at her baby sister, then at him, and finally let Sofia go. Gustavo picked up Sofia, but he hardly knew how to hold her. It was strange, him, who'd held million-dollar contracts, trembling now just to carry a baby. Sofia's warmth seeped into his chest. She was light, so light, and felt even more fragile up close. Her face was flushed, her eyes glazed, her mouth open in a hoarse cry. Gustavo was terrified. What if she didn't survive until the hospital? What if he waited too long in all this indecision? "Come on, hurry," he choked out, voice trembling as he led the way to the car. Luna hesitated, glancing back at the cardboard box as if leaving a part of herself behind. Then she grabbed the dirty little blanket and followed, head down, dragging her bare feet across the wet sidewalk. Gustavo opened the back door. Luna got in with the blanket, peering around like a scared animal, ready to bolt if anything went wrong. Sofia's cries were growing weaker, and Gustavo slid into the car with her in his arms, fearing how hot her body felt against him. For a moment, no one spoke. All you could hear was the children's ragged breathing and the rain against the glass. Gustavo looked in the mirror, seeing Luna press the blanket to her face, trying to hide. Her muffled sobs filled the car with something heavy, a silence that spoke for itself. Starting up the car, Gustavo glanced at his own dirty hands on the wheel. He didn't know if the wetness was sweat, rain, or fear. "Just hold on a little longer, please," he murmured, barely audible, as if Sofia could hear and understand. It was the first time in ages he'd felt real fear. Gut-deep fear, the kind that blooms in your chest and shows you every awful possibility. He sped toward the hospital. Headlights streaked by, lighting up Luna's tense face from time to time. Gustavo pulled Sofia closer. The anger at himself, the guilt, the helplessness, all of it tangled together. In the back of his mind, memories from his own childhood started returning. Cold nights, fear, someone holding his hand when he was small, long-forgotten things, shoved into a corner of memory. Luna opened her mouth, but said nothing. She just stared straight ahead, as if this was some awful dream. In Gustavo's arms, Sofia finally stopped crying, but it was an odd quiet. Not peace, but exhaustion, as if the crying had drained every last drop of strength. A tear slipped down Gustavo's face. He didn't even notice. No one saw. The car sped down the avenue, the world outside noisy and indifferent, but inside was only fear and a hope that refused to die. The hospital loomed ahead at last, bright and jarring against the night. Gustavo pressed the gas, holding Sofia like he was holding someone's whole life for the very first time. In that moment, he wasn't the confident millionaire, just a man terrified of losing a child who never asked for any of this. The hospital was packed that night. The lights were stark, the hallways long, echoing with hurried voices and gurneys wheeling back and forth. Gustavo came in, shirt soaked, hair plastered to his head with rain. He held Sofia against his chest, so tiny, so hot, her burning skin searing his palm. Luna clung tightly to his shirt, face half hidden, one scared, one eye peeking out. They didn't go unnoticed. A nurse eyed Gustavo from head to toe, taking in his expensive clothes, the panic in his manner, but the sick baby in his arms was what drew the stares, so tired, she could barely cry. In the waiting area, people sat slumped in chairs, a mother rocking a coughing child. Yet, when Gustavo called for help, the whole place quieted, an odd hush settling in, everyone watching. The nurse asked, "What happened to this little girl, sir?" Gustavo stammered, lost, struggling to string words together. Nothing like a business CO now. He said he'd found the child on the street. She needed help. She had a high fever. The nurse frowned, not quite understanding, but carefully took Sofia from his arms, eyes never leaving him. A young, sober-looking doctor with heavy circles under his eyes came over. "Whose children are these? Are you a relative? Father? Guardian?" Gustavo shook his head, about to say no, but the word stuck in his throat. He glanced at Luna, who gripped him tighter, clutching his belt, her tear-streaked eyes full of terror. The doctor sensed how she clung to the stranger and tensed even more, jotting something on a clipboard. The nurse carried Sofia inside. Luna pulled on Gustavo's arm, whining, "Don't take my sister. Don't leave her alone. Please, mister, promise me." The girl's desperation made everyone pause. Gustavo leaned down, doing his best to sound calm in spite of his racing heart. "They're going to take care of her, Luna. I promise you'll see her again, okay? I'm right here." But Luna looked back at him with a mix of hope and doubt. She didn't know if she could believe it. It wasn't long before the police showed up. A short female officer with a stern look asked for Gustavo's ID. Another officer watched the two girls, taking in every detail. They kept asking, "Can you explain it again? Where did you find them? Why was it you who brought them?" The tone was heavy, as if one word out of place could turn this whole thing into a crime. Gustavo felt cold sweat running down his back, felt ashamed, even angry, to be treated this way, yet understood. He was nothing to these children, at least not officially. Luna huddled closer into him, her tiny cold hand gripping his. "Mister, don't let anyone take Sofia. Please," she whispered, nearly making Gustavo cry. Inside, he wrestled with bad memories, abandonment, childhood shouting. He remembered his own mother yelling, the emptiness, grown-ups slamming the door. With a rough, nearly trembling voice, he said, "I just want to help, I swear. These kids have been alone for days. No one deserves to starve or suffer anymore." People in the corridor whispered and stared. An old lady pointed, murmured, judging his clothes, trying to figure him out. A reporter came in, snapped a photo, messaged on his phone. That kind of curiosity could crush any good intention. Gustavo felt the weight of the looks, of judgment. The doctor stepped aside, murmured urgently into the phone, always glancing back at him. Finally, an older woman doctor appeared. She looked at Luna the way only someone who's seen a lot of suffering can. She asked gently, "Are you hungry? Want some water?" Luna barely nodded. Gustavo wanted to answer, but couldn't. For the first time in years, he felt powerless. His money, his name, it meant nothing here. All he could do was wait. Luna started shivering. It wasn't just the cold. She was scared, lost, the entire world pressing down on a 7-year-old's shoulders. "She's staying with me, right? You're not going to leave?" she asked for the third time. Gustavo breathed deeply, holding her hand tighter than he meant. "I won't. I promise. I won't ever leave you alone again. Never." The police took Gustavo's details, asked endless questions. Someone mentioned child protection services. Gustavo wondered if they'd take Luna away too, if they'd decide he was a threat. He imagined what would happen if they separated the two girls. Panic throbbed behind his eyes. He tried to remember all the pain he'd sworn to bury, but it came rushing back. He knew he must be strong, but all he wanted was to disappear or cry with the children. A nurse reappeared. "The baby needs to be admitted. She's very weak, urgent fluids, tests." Gustavo nodded, unsure if he was even allowed to stay, but not moving. Luna clung to his leg like it was the last good thing left in the world. The whole hospital seemed frozen around them. Only the muffled cries of other kids and the beeps of machines filled the air. Time stretched unbearably thin. Every minute was eternity to someone afraid of losing what they loved. Gustavo, once so imposing, was now just a small man before pain. He wondered if he'd ever deserve to be called family, if he'd be believed when life had always made him the outsider. But in those frightened eyes, locked onto his, there was trust. A silent plea, "Don't let go of my hand." Gustavo didn't sleep. He didn't even try, to be honest. He sat in the armchair outside Sofia's hospital room, staring at the white door. The hospital clock was a round dial fighting the ticking minutes, and nights slipped by unnoticed. His face looked older than yesterday, deep lines in his cheeks and a strange weariness in his eyes. Sometimes he closed them and tried to breathe, only to flinch at some distant sound, a cry of pain down the hall, or the steady beep of machines beyond the wall. A nurse stopped by early in the morning, managing a small smile. She looked at Luna, who slept sitting up, knees drawn up, wrapped in a jacket that wasn't hers. The girl's feet were dirty, nails broken. Even asleep, exhausted, Luna hugged her limp doll tight, as if she might need to run again at any moment. Only when Gustavo saw Sofia's labored, unsure breathing did everything tighten inside even more. He felt angry at the world, at the chasms that open under children, at the indifference of so many busy, wealthy people. Angry, too, at himself, for surviving this as a child and pretending he'd never see it again. But now, here, he couldn't pretend not to care. When the sun finally crept in, a pale sliver through the window, Gustavo stood up. He picked up his phone and dialed out of habit, an old number from harder days. He texted his trusted lawyer. "Need good people to find someone. It's urgent." Luna woke up, eyes bleary, dark circles under them. She didn't ask about her mother, but just stared at Gustavo with that mix of hope and suspicion. The silence between them was so thick it hurt, broken only by the noise of the hospital around them. For a second, Gustavo remembered how people looked at him as a child, always expecting trouble. He left the hospital and went straight to his car, still dazed. The windows fogged up from the cold. Outside, the drizzle didn't seem it would ever end. The streets were empty except for hurried passers-by, no one really looking around. Gustavo turned the key but stayed where he was, staring at nothing, trying to recall the girl's mother's face. It was hard to piece together. He remembered clear eyes, hair falling over her face. He remembered loud laughter, someone who wasn't afraid of anything, and that uncomfortable feeling. How could he have lost touch? Why had she disappeared like that? The detective arrived in less than an hour. He was a quiet man, used to half-told stories. Gustavo opened up the envelope with the letter from the cardboard box and showed it to him. They read it together, every crumpled fold soaked in desperation. In the bottom corner, there was a faded lipstick mark, almost washed away by the rain, but still there. The detective said he'd start with police stations, then hospitals, then shelters. Gustavo fought his anxiety by crushing a piece of paper in his hand. Driving back to the mansion, Gustavo inhaled the scent of old leather in his expensive car, but everything felt off, out of place. He looked at the buildings flying by, the gray avenues, and remembered the time when he'd collect any photograph he found on the street, since he had none of his own mother. He always thought running from the past was enough to be happy. Now he realized the past never actually left. It just waited, quiet, until someone needed it again. The lawyer called in the afternoon, voice urgent, found some old receipts in her name, and an address, not far from the hospital. Gustavo didn't hesitate a second. He got in the car and went right over. The building was old, badly painted. The doorman recognized the name. She disappeared some time ago. Always had 2 girls with her. Then she never came back. The man's eyes lingered on Gustavo, curious, as if waiting for an explanation he couldn't give. Gustavo walked the damp-smelling hallway. Upstairs, he found a neighbor, Mrs. Sonia, a frail lady with paint-stained fingers and a wool sweater. She answered the door slowly, giving Gustavo a once-over. He explained he was looking for Juliana, the girl's mother. Tears filled the old woman's eyes. She was an angel. Never complained about anything, you know? Did all she could for those girls. Until the day she vanished. She looked down. I saw when her husband came back. He was a strange man, always yelling. After that, I never saw her again. The girls cried so much that night. On the apartment floor, Gustavo spotted a pair of tiny shoes, one with a holy sock stuffed inside. He had to fight not to cry. You could imagine the rush of those last minutes there. A suitcase open, children's clothes, a stuffed toy dropped by the door. Back on his way to the car, his phone buzzed again. The detective had a lead. Someone had seen a woman like Juliana at a municipal shelter, but it had been months. Gustavo looked up at the heavy sky, clouds hanging low, as if the world were waiting for a decision. He remembered the stained note, the impossible request, please take care of my girls. I failed, but my forgiveness is in the hands of someone good. Inside the car, with rain drumming overhead, Gustavo felt more alone than ever. But now, in that instant, he knew he wouldn't give up. Because for the first time in his life, someone truly needed him. And he needed them. The social worker's office had that hush, full of people talking quietly, a distant phone ringing. Gustavo sat in his chair, clenching his fist to stop his leg from shaking. He looked so big there, in his expensive suit and tired face, but his eyes gave it all away, the same old fear, like a child who doesn't know whether to expect a beating or a hug. The social worker was a slim woman, glasses sliding to the tip of her nose, a forgotten mug of tea on the desk. She stared at her paper for a while, a silence that stung, then opened another file. Mr. Gustavo, she started, voice careful, as if not to wake old wounds. I checked the girl's mother's surname in the hospital records. And the birth dates, too. I don't know if this is anything, but did you go to São Lucas, over in Vila Mariana? He froze. The school name hit his mind like a hammer. So many years ago, it felt like another life. He tried to recall people, old laughs in the yard, but only one face came, straight black hair, hope bright in her smile. For a moment, Gustavo's world shrank to just himself and that face. Why do you ask? He said, his voice shaky, fighting not to give away more than he wanted. The woman held the silence for another moment. Well, the girl's mother. Beatrice, do you remember her? Records say Beatrice Gama. Neighbors call her real sweet in these forms. There's a photo. She slid it from a folder, handing it over as gently as something sacred. Gustavo's hands trembled harder. Looking at the picture was like opening a forgotten jar and letting all the sense of childhood pour out. It was her, Beatrice. Small, holding a little girl, Luna, head down, one eye peeking up. In her lap, a baby, too small, wrapped in a blanket of tears. His heart hammered, each beat recalling silly sunny afternoons in the playground, 2 kids swearing never to lose each other. He took a while before he could speak, tears hovering that he tried to hide with a cough. We were really close. Best friend I had at school, he admitted, pain twisting in his chest. Then she vanished. No one told me anything. She just stopped coming. I only heard that her mother fell sick, and then nothing. The woman folded her hands on the desk, her gaze gentle. She died not long ago. Alone, in a shelter. Left the girls with a neighbor, But the woman was scared of losing custody, so she ran off too. The rest, the streets. She handed over a different envelope. We found this letter in her things. Your name is in it. Gustavo opened the letter, trying to breathe steadily. The handwriting was all cramped and slanted, Beatrice's. She apologized, said she never wanted to disappear, that memories were the only good thing she kept. And there, right at the bottom, a line that hit him like a blow. If you ever find my girls, Gustavo, please don't turn away. Take care of Sofia as if she were your own blood. His name, written there again, stirred up an old tenderness and a sleeping anger. He stared at the wall behind the social worker, remembering the last night he saw Beatrice, her quiet sobbing as she hugged him tight and vanished. She never explained. No one ever did. That's why I requested the DNA test, the social worker whispered. Sofia's birth date lines up. His ears filled with pressure, like swimming too deep and running out of air. He didn't hear the sounds from the street, the bus engines outside, not even the harsh neon above him. He could only hear his own pounding heartbeat and the echo of Beatrice's laughter as they jumped rope on the old-school sidewalk, pretending nothing could ever go wrong. Gustavo's hands were ice cold. Part of him wanted to stand up and walk away, throw all of this out. He'd never asked to feel any of this, never wanted the past dragged back up. But something kept tugging, Sofia's way of looking at him in the hospital, how Luna hugged her sister even as she slept, as if she could protect her from the whole world with those skinny arms. I don't know if I can wait for that test, he said in almost a whisper, staring at his fingers. If it's true, if Sofia is my daughter. I left my own daughter on the street. His throat closed up. He couldn't finish, shame burning across his cheeks. The social worker said nothing, just pushed a tissue box towards him, silent, almost motherly. The clock's hand inched painfully slowly. Just a little longer to wait for the results. Gustavo combed his mind for details, Sofia's eyes, Luna's nose, trying to find some part of himself in them. No amount of money could bring any peace to this feeling. Luna, meanwhile, slept curled in a chair in the next room. Her hair was dirty, cheeks marked from too many nights without a roof. Sometimes she mumbled, maybe crying for her mom in her sleep, hugging her own arm tight to keep warm. Gustavo watched from the half-open door, feeling a guilt deeper than he'd ever known, not even the hunger he'd known as a boy, not even his fights with his own mother compared. The rain outside had faded, now just water trailing down the windows, rinsing the city, rinsing away a bit of his despair too. Deep down, Gustavo hoped it was true and, at the same time, was terrified of what it might mean. He'd be the father of a baby who'd lived on the streets, a man tied to a past he'd tried to bury even from himself. For a long while, he sat there, staring at the picture of Beatrice and the girls, listening to the ticking clock, trying to find the courage not to run away. Because now, it wasn't just charity, not just pity. This was a responsibility no one could ever take away from him. The ticking clock on the wall was the only sound in the white office. Gustavo sat with sweaty hands, his eyes red from so many sleepless nights. He stared straight ahead, as if he could see through the glass, through the door, back to his life before all this. Meetings, contracts, a city at his feet. Now none of that mattered anymore. All he could think of was the little girl with chubby cheeks and huge eyes who whimpered when she had a fever, and her sister, tangled hair, always trying to pretend she was tough. The social worker walked in quietly, as though she knew she was bringing something heavier than any business news. She looked at Gustavo, managed an encouraging smile, but her eyes were damp too, as if she lived every day of this weight with him. We have the result, Mr. Gustavo, she said softly, holding the envelope in both hands. The paper was creased, she must have read it a dozen times herself. The DNA confirms. Sofia is your daughter. For a second, nothing existed. Not the clock. Not the sounds outside, nor the cars with their rain-blurred headlights. It was just Gustavo, staring at the envelope, hearing the words as if it took hours for them to reach his heart. His whole body felt heavy, as if he'd sink right there in the chair. His face finally let go pride, his business armor, even that old fear of feeling too much, all of it dropped away, leaving only a lost look shining behind his glasses. He couldn't lift his head, just slowly wiped his face, trying to hide his tears before anyone saw. No one said anything. The assistant stayed right there, her hand resting on his shoulder. And Gustavo felt a kind of relief, but mixed with guilt. A guilt that wasn't just about being absent, but about his entire past. He thought of all the times he'd walked past a child on the street without looking. He thought of his own mother, her face fading from memory. He wondered how many years he'd spent angry at the world, running from everything that hurt. Now, here he was. Life was dragging him back to everything he'd tried to bury. Sofia was his blood, a part of him, so small, so defenseless, almost dying from cold and hunger beneath an overpass. He'd let it happen, without even knowing. When he left the office, Gustavo didn't go home. He got into his car and closed the door gently, like someone trying not to wake a bad dream. He sat there on the leather seat that no longer felt comfortable. It was cold, every seam poking him, reminding him that none of it mattered anymore. He slumped over the steering wheel, buried his face in his hands, and cried. It wasn't a pretty cry, or even a cry of relief. It was an ugly, silent sob, full of shame, fear, pain, and love all tangled together. Each tear seemed to knock another brick out of that wall he'd spent years building. He thought of Sofia, curled up under that torn blanket, of Luna, standing like a thin little bird, doing everything she could to protect her sister. How was he ever going to look them in the eye again? How could he explain why it took him so long to realize? It took a while, maybe many minutes, before he managed to start the car. He drove through the city lights, everything blurred by tears. On every corner, he saw his own lost childhood, his dreams drifting away without warning. And now, all he could think of were the two sisters, Luna, so small and yet so brave. Sofia, with his eyes, even if she didn't know it. When he reached the hospital, he stopped in the long hallway, where the smell of antiseptic always hung in the air. Luna was sitting by the window, cradling Sofia in her arms. Sofia was asleep, finally breathing normally, her little arms relaxed, a strand of hair stuck to her cheek. Luna looked at Gustavo differently than she had that day under the overpass. There was less fear now, more uncertainty. But there was a glimmer of hope too, as if she still wanted to believe in someone. Gustavo sat down carefully beside her, almost too scared to speak. He looked at Sofia, at her tiny face, now so familiar. Luna remained quiet, fiddling with the edge of the blanket, waiting. He gently tucked a lock of Luna's hair behind her ear. The girl didn't even flinch. Gustavo swallowed hard, wiped his face one more time, and spoke, almost in a whisper. I'm Sofia's dad. But, Luna, I'd really like to be your dad too, if you'll let me. It hurt to say it. He was just as afraid of being rejected as he was of losing them right then and there. But Luna only looked at him, taking her time to answer. The only sound in the room was the sisters breathing. Rain tapped on the window, that music of a cold night. Luna hugged Sofia closer to her chest and looked Gustavo straight in the eye. She didn't cry, she didn't smile. She just nodded, plain and simple, like a child who wants to believe she is safe, at least once in her life. Right then, Gustavo understood. It wasn't about paperwork, or DNA, or the past. It was about protecting, sharing the blanket, carrying her in his arms until the fever broke. It was about promising, from now on, that they would never sleep in the cold again, never be left alone. In that instant, Gustavo made the decision that changed everything. He would adopt Luna and Sofia. He would bring them home, give them his last name, give them their own room and the thickest blanket in the world. But above all, he'd give them what he himself had needed as a child, a lap to climb into, an embrace, and the right to be loved without ever having to ask. He closed his eyes and breathed deeply, letting go for the first time, feeling that it was possible to change, even after so many mistakes. Luna leaned her head against his shoulder, still shy, but letting him stay close. And Sofia, in her own way, breathed softly, as if sensing that next to her father, the world could never be quite so cold. Outside, the night was still dark. But inside, it felt as if the sun had finally come up. This time, Gustavo wouldn't leave any doors closed or let fear smother what he felt. He looked at the girls and whispered, "I'll never abandon you again. Never." And there, in the silence between the three of them, a family was born, hurt, patched together, but whole. The whole house was quiet that morning. Not the heavy silence of the overpass, not the fear, the horns blaring in the middle of the night, or the bitter wind burning your face as it passed. Now, the silence seemed to welcome them, almost like an embrace. Gustavo stopped at the doorway. He'd never noticed how the light changed when it fell on the walls. And here, the sunlight came in clean and clear, streaming through the big window. It landed right on Sofia's face, who was now asleep, not on cardboard, not tangled in a torn blanket, but on a soft mattress, half lost among new stuffed animals. Luna was sitting on the carpet, legs crossed, slowly flipping through a storybook, the kind that crackles when you turn the page. A yellow-haired doll leaned against her arm, but Luna only watched Sofia sleeping. Gustavo stood there for a while, quiet. He thought about how many important doors he'd opened, boardrooms, offices, but none had ever felt as daunting as this one. That morning, he wanted to say something, but it felt like if he spoke, he'd scare away the fragile moment. Luna saw his face. He looked different, a bit tired, but with a strange light in his eyes. He looked like someone who had been crying, but now was trying to smile so no one else would worry. Gustavo stepped inside, slowly. He couldn't remember the last time he'd felt nervous around kids. He whispered a soft good morning. Luna replied without taking her eyes off her sister, just nodding silently. The girl still seemed a little scared, that worried look on her face, as if she couldn't quite believe she wouldn't be thrown out or forgotten the next day. He crouched down gently, so he was at their level. His voice softened, more affectionate now. "Did you sleep well?" Luna looked at the bed, at the soft blanket, at Sofia still lying there. She squeezed the teddy bear Gustavo had given her the day before. Her eyes filled with tears, but it was different this time, not fear. It was a kind of relief so big it almost hurt, like homesickness. "I've never slept so well," she said, her voice raw and quiet. "It's not cold here. Sofia doesn't cough at night." Sofia woke up just then, rubbing her big round eyes, reaching out for Luna with her little hand. As soon as she found her sister's arm, she grinned wide, showing those gums with hardly any teeth. Gustavo felt something rise up in his chest, a mix of pride, nerves, and fear of messing everything up. He wanted to reach out and hold them both, but he stood still, giving them space, letting it be their choice. Luna stood up, walked over to him. Small as she was, she walked with a determination beyond her years, like someone who'd already carried the weight of the world. She stopped right in front of Gustavo and looked at him, serious, the way children do when they're trying to decide if it's really safe to trust. "Do you promise you'll never leave us again?" she asked in a whisper. His chest tightened. It took a few seconds before he could get any words out. When they came, they caught in his throat, but they were true. "I promise, Luna. I swear on everything. You'll never have to be cold again, never go to sleep afraid. Now you have a home, and you have a dad." The word just hung there. Dad. It sounded different now, full of meaning. That was when Luna couldn't hold it back anymore. Her face melted into a smile, and then she started to cry. She threw herself at Gustavo's neck. She hugged him tightly, as hard as her little arms could, her fingers gripping his shirt, clinging on as if she never wanted this moment to end. He closed his eyes, unable to hold back his own tears. He scooped Luna into his lap, and for the first time in many years, he felt something open up inside him, like all the ice had finally thawed. Sofia, still a little groggy, reached out her arms, wanting to be held too. Gustavo opened his arms wider and gathered them both in. The scent of fresh shampoo, their warm skin, their quiet laughter. For a second, the world stood still. Still hugging him, Luna rested her head against his chest and, in a trembling little voice, whispered, "Thank you, Dad." Gustavo felt the ground disappear beneath him. That word, spoken so gently, small but unstoppable, was like a remedy in a life full of wounds. At that moment, he promised himself he would never close his heart again. The girls would have everything, not just toys and good food, but comfort, hugs, stories to tell, a family to call their own. Later, Gustavo took the girls to see the garden. He showed them every corner of the house, their new toys, the clothes neatly folded in the closet. Luna laughed out loud with every discovery. Sofia, in his arms, flailed with excitement, wanting to touch everything. The housekeeper appeared in the doorway, dabbing her eyes, announcing she'd made cakes and hot chocolate. Everyone was watching over the girls, helping them with their coats, brushing their hair, tying pretty ribbons. The whole mansion felt like a different place, where once you only heard hurried footsteps, meetings, calls for quiet. Now there was the rush of children, real laughter, a scent of good things to come drifting down the halls. That night, while the girls slept, Gustavo stood at their door, just watching. He didn't make a sound. He simply stood there in the dark, watching them share the bed, dreaming side by side. He thought of all the nights he'd spent alone, surrounded by luxury but empty inside. Now, with their arms close by, he understood that love and happiness weren't just movie fantasies. They were the gentle weight of two small bodies sleeping, believing that tomorrow would be better. Outside, it was a night like so many others. Rain falling, the city rushing, people passing by without looking. But in that house, something new had begun. A promise. And real hope. Gustavo knew from that day forward, his fortune would be shared, multiplied. Not just with these girls, but with every child he met, every life that crossed his path. Because no one, ever, should have to sleep beside a cardboard box. He smiled to himself, wiped his eyes, and quietly closed the door so he wouldn't wake his daughters.